podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for our Wednesday pod. We've got a very, very special guest with us today. But first off, I'm going to introduce my cohort here, Johnny Hawley. Hello, mate.
Hi, Gav. Nice to nice to be back, invading everybody's earphones again for the billionth time this summer.
Yes, yeah, we're like a yeast infection. People can't get rid of us.
It's all complimentary.
Yeah. I did say we had a special guest with us today. We're joined by Tom White from Sky Sports News. Hello, mate.
Don't call me a Yeast infection. I've been called a lot of ththings in my life, but that would be a first. And that certainly wouldn't be our first choice.
Luckily for our listeners, Tom, they've just had to put up with us. So, we can't tar you with that brush. But, how are you, mate? How's it going?
Very well, very busy at the moment, which is always a good thing. It's my last week on Good Morning Transfers and Transfer Talk, which I've been doing since 2019. And I'd forgotten just how mental it is, but in a good way. Good way. Very happy about it, but it's a really exciting window in general. But I think more so for us than anyone else, as in Sunderland fans.
Yeah. So what's the changes then if you're moving on from that? What you're going to be going on to?
Yeah. So I've been doing that since 2019. I've been doing Good Morning Sports Fans since 2021. But as of Monday, I'm starting a new show called Sky Sports FC. The FC being fan club. 10 a.m. till midday every weekday. So it's me plus one pundit. At the moment, that's Tim Sherwood, Darren McAntony, Jamie O'Hara, Jay Bothroyd and Charlie Austin. And the idea is we'll also have verified fans on from each Premier League club. And you can get involved as a viewer by sending in voice notes on WhatsApp. So the idea is that the show is one big WhatsApp group in a way. We want the viewers to feel like they're in the WhatsApp group and they can contribute to the show with me and whoever the guest is on the day and with their voice notes. And you can also get involved via like X and stuff like that. But it's brand new, very different and very exciting. So that's from Monday.
Well, it sounds fun. I'm going to tune into that and see what it's like. But I don't know if you heard as well. We had Keith on last week, Keith Downey, and that one went down well. You gave the only reason I bring that up is because you gave him a plug, didn't you, when you were last on with us, which was 7-8 weeks ago, and you said, I hope people just give Keith a bit more leeway, like he's a nice bloke and all the rest of it. And then after we did that pod with him, the response was absolutely mental. I've never seen a response like it to anything we've done in terms of podcasts, where just loads of people just like couldn't believe how well he came across. So I just wanted to bring that up because you kick-started that one. It got me thinking, we should probably get Keith on the show and see what he's got to say.
Yeah, well, I'm glad the reaction was good. I think that when you get the chance to kind of explain things, so all of the sort of criticism that he was taking, when he gets a chance to explain it, people think, oh, actually, that is fair enough. What he's saying does make sense, so I am glad about that. And he's talking about us more than anyone else this summer. So,
yeah,
point proven, I suppose.
Yeah, it has made a bit of a difference, Johnny, that hasn't it? That Keith's been at the forefront, breaking so much good news for Sunderland fans. I think he's became one of my go-tos when I'm looking out to see what's going on with Sunderland over the summer.
Yeah, I was going to say, explaining himself and everything. Yeah, that's absolutely going to help, but it also helps when we're not in League One anymore and we're up in the Premier League again and spending 100 million plus on a handful of some of the best young players on the continent. So, but no, obviously brilliant for Keith because nobody should get abused just for doing the job, and the more he keeps reporting on bad stuff happening to the mags as well, the better for me. So keep it up, Keith, mate.
Yeah, has that been fun for you, Tom? I know you're not meant to show any bias on the TV, but it must be nice being able to say that somebody's rejected Newcastle and this is not going right for them. And I know in the back of your mind you're probably enjoying that.
Yeah, you see, I've said many a time, very proud to be a Sunderland fan, I don't hate Newcastle. I don't. The vast majority of my friends are Newcastle fans. I don't want them to be miserable. I want us to beat them. And I'm not saying I want them to win the title or anything like that, but I don't take any joy in their misery.
Yeah, you should be a politician, Tom.
Yeah, very diplomatic.
Before we get into transfers and things, I'm just keen to hear what you think about how the pre-season's gone for us so far. Because I don't know how many of the games you've watched, but we've played, 5-6 games now, and we're kind of coming to the end of that process. We're only a couple of weeks from the Premier League season starting. So what have you made of what you've seen so far? Because I know we always say this on this pod, results don't always matter, performances don't always matter. We haven't won many games, but we've tried to pick the positives from them performances. I'm just wondering if you've been doing the same thing.
Yeah, I've been a bit not really that bothered. I've watched them. I think I've only missed one. So I've watched them all. I haven't been that bothered. I've been kind of looking at the new players individually as opposed to, because they're not going to gel immediately. The team isn't going to gel. That will take a while. The one thing I am worried about the lack of goals, because then again, I'm probably about to contradict myself, because I was about to say we can't score no goals in pre-season, then expect to score 4 past West Ham on the opening day. But I was saying the same thing at the end of last season.
Yeah.
We can't go all these games without winning, then expect to go up in the playoffs. And we did go up in the playoffs. So although it does worry me a little bit, it's not something that I am obviously be over the top to say having sleepless nights over anyway, but I'm not that worried, and I do expect there to be more players to come in to help that situation. But yeah, lack of goals has been a worry, but I do think we've looked comfortable. We haven't looked shaky at the back, I wouldn't say, on the most part. I think we've looked quite comfortable, and it will be a very different, completely different when we play West Ham with a packed house behind the players. Everything will naturally change. I just hope that we can start finding the back of the net, obviously.
Yeah, it's that cohesion, Johnny, isn't it? It's not going to come overnight. So many new players, the turnover of the squad's been pretty crazy, really. And even, at the weekend just gone there, the goalkeeper said after the game, Robin Roofs, that he literally had one training session with his teammates, and during the game he was trying to remember people's names and things. And Granit Xhaka will have had the exact same problem, Granit Xhaka's first game for Sunderland, so that's not going to come overnight. But you would like to think in the last 2 games of pre-season we might see an improvement on those sort of things, and it'll help.
Well, you'd hope so. But it's not just the turnover of personnel in terms of the transfers coming in, which obviously plays a big part. I mean, not everyone as extreme as Roofs having one training session, but still, a lot of getting used to each other. But even on top of that, I mean, some of the players who've played quite a lot of minutes in pre-season who were already at the club were injured and not playing all of last season anyway. So I'm thinking of Sealt and Huggins in particular there, who, brilliant to see them back and getting minutes, in pre-season, because hopefully they both managed to stay injury-free. But even they're effectively a bit like new signings in a sense going into the team, in that they haven't played with these players a lot. They've not played with anybody a lot, but, there's still that level of, building up the cohesion and stuff that needs to come for everybody from front to back in the team. It's, I think as Tom was saying, we're not going to have sleepless nights over it. Like, we've lost a few pre-season games, but I think we'll cope. But I think it's more for me, and we've made this point before, Gav, it's the individual players' confidence. I think that's important. If you're my ender, you just want to hit the back of the net a couple of times before we get going. Same thing for all of the forwards. And, as a keeper, you don't want to be picking the ball out the net 4 times a game or 3 times a game if you can help it. So, I'm not too worried, but you would hope we stepped up a little bit over the next game or 2.
Yeah, it looks like from I think it was Nick Barnes had reported this, that the game on Saturday in Germany is going to be effectively the first team, the team that's going to play against West Ham, whereas the game on the Sunday will be the best of the rest type of thing at the stadium. I was a little bit surprised by that, Tom. If that's the case, I was thinking because the first game of the season's at the stadium, it would make sense to play the best team at the Stadium of Light. But by all accounts, we're going to approach it slightly differently. What do you think of that? What do you think of the way we're going to approach these last two games?
Well, I'm raging because every year, at least once a year, me and my friends have a big day out on the lash in Durham where we meet at midday and just go until as long as we want. And once Sunderland organised that game on the Saturday in Germany, that ruled a lot of people out because, again, they were flying to Germany for the game. So I'm not really very happy with the club about that, but at least they've got the decent to play their first team in that game. But in terms of which game the first teamers are in, I see what you mean. Don't make the ones who are in the first. Don't make them do a needless flight over there or what have you. But I don't know the reasons behind it. I think the interesting thing for me is if the first game of the season was Saturday, what would that team be? Because we've got a lot of injuries. We are in for a lot more players. We're short in some areas, overloaded in some areas. And I think that if this wouldn't be if this Saturday was the first game of the season, this wouldn't be the team, but it would, for me, it would be Roofs in goal because Patterson's out. It would be Siddiqui at right back, Hume at left back, Reynaldo and Ballard as the centre backs. Now, that's not going to be the back four on the opening day. No chance.
If it is, we've got big problems.
Yeah, because of the play. But Siddiqui can't play right back, and we know Hume can play left back. The midfield three would be Xhaka, Diarra and Lafay. The wingers would be Adingra and Talby. At this stage, by the way, I would actually start Roberts and wait until Talby is up to speed.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And although on that, and it would be either Mayenda or Isidore up front. When I see the team sheet, I never mind which one that is because I like them both. But on Talby, we have on Monday I was on air with a really good European football expert called Kevin Hatchard. There's him, there's Andy Brassel and Dougie Critchley, who you've had on here before. Really good European experts. And Kevin Hatchard's seen Talby a lot. And in pre-season, he hasn't really stood out as much as others. But Hatchard said he said to me, "How did you sign him?" And said, "You are all going to love him." Described him as raw. He said he's very raw, but you are all going to love him. And so he kind of picked him out as the one to watch. But in terms of the team on Saturday, right now it's quite hard to say what the best team would be.
I would agree. Yeah, I'm struggling a bit. I mean, we talked about this on the reaction pod, Johnny, didn't we? About like playing Reynaldo left back and Harrison Jones playing and not knowing who the centre half pairing's going to be, and the fact that at the minute the first choice centre halves are Ballard, who's I don't mind Ballard, but also Jensen Seelt, who's been injured for God knows how long, and you're asking a lot for him, considering he barely played in the Championship, really, in the 2 seasons he's been with us already. So that is a concern, isn't it? And I think as we go on, we'll probably talk about defenders and stuff, but at the minute, that defence is literally going to be Reynaldo, Seelt, presuming Seelt's fine, Ballard and Hume. And, I mean, there's a big issue there with centre-half, isn't there?
Yeah, and it feels harsh as well, because actually when you read that 4 out, I mean, Tom gave a 4, you've given a 4. Neither of them are ideal. The one that you've just read out probably has 3 players in their right positions who we would expect to play a decent amount of football this season in Hume, Ballard and Reynaldo. So it feels harsh almost singling Seelt out and going, actually, if he's starting the first game, that's a problem. But it's nothing to do with his ability, because I think, on a good day, Seelt's got enough about him to keep quite a lot of Premier League attacks quiet, obviously along with the rest of the defenders. But the problem for me would be more just having any one of those defenders be an obvious weak point. They're just going to get targeted. You know what I mean? Any Premier League manager worth the salt is going to look at that and go, oh, he's had his cruciate done and he's barely played any football in, realistically, 2 full seasons at this point. And he's starting in the first day. Let's get onto him. Every ball in the box will be on Seelt's head. Every run will be off his shoulder. And as I say, it would be the same for anybody in that position where you're coming in cold. It would be the same if Huggins had to start. If Trace Hume goes over on his ankle the morning of the game and Huggins is starting right back, you're going to be in the exact same boat and they're going to be targeted. And I just think we need to try and avoid being in a position where people are getting singled out, because it's very difficult as a team to do anything about that. You know, if they're getting targeted, you can't just run over and play in his position for him. So, yeah, for me, we want to be more well-rounded, which, you know, seems obvious to say. Every team in the world wants to be more well-rounded, but just in the sense of, yeah, we don't want too much inexperience and lack of fitness, because at this level, you're just going to get punished.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, Tom, on the fact that we were talking about this the other day? We have basically replaced the full team, or give or take a handful of players. It's going to be practically a new team. And I mean, you can understand this because we've had to spend money to try and make sure you've got a squad to compete. But that team that got promoted, there is a feeling that it's almost like, okay, you did your job, but some of you guys aren't going to be starting that game against West Ham. They'll be needed. I'm specifically talking about Dan Neil here, is one of the big ones. The captain of the team last season, virtually ever present. We go and spend 90 million or whatever it's been on midfield players. And you're looking at it then, you're going, well, Dan Neil's probably not going to be in the starting 11 for that West Ham game. I think even the managers came out and said Xhaka is probably going to be the captain next season. What do you make of that? Because it's a big call, isn't it, to just flip everything like we've done.
In terms of a new team, that's quite normal. If you've got in the Championship, your first choice team and then a player beneath each player, so first choice and a second choice. When you go up, the ideal situation for most clubs, depending on the finances, etc., is you buy a whole new first team, and that first team in the Championship becomes the ones in reserve, and then the ones who drop down a third choice, they go. That's the kind of ideal scenario, which looks to be pretty much what we're trying to do. But specifically on Dan Neil, I'll be devastated if he doesn't sign a new contract. One, because I absolutely love him. I think he's a brilliant player. But the other reason is from a kind of business point of view, which is important in football. If we were to replace him, we'd have to pay more to replace him than we'd get for him. And whatever wages we'd be paying on that new player would be more than what Dan Neil's new contract would be. Because Dan Neil came through the system, if you think of like me at Sky, I started at the very bottom. Everyone knows I was making the teas and coffees. That's how I started. And when you go up the ladder and getting to become a presenter, which I wanted to be, it took a long time for people to take me seriously because they still remembered me making the teas and coffees. Dan Neil will probably not be getting, I'm not saying that he should get the same as Xhaka, and he wouldn't be saying that either. But Dan Neil probably isn't getting paid what he would be getting if he was a new signing. And that is the same in most businesses, because people still remember him as the youngster. I don't think they clean players' boots anymore, but you know what I mean. They'll picture him in the under-19s and younger than that, under-18s and younger than that. And I think that I've got no idea what Dan Neil is on. I don't know what the hold-up is in the new contract. I don't know whether he's been offered one and rejected it. I don't know if he hasn't been. None of that. I'm not saying I know any of that. But if he's on at X amount and he wants more, it won't be break the bank money, because he's not going to be. He'll have seen players like Lafay, Diarra, Xhaka coming on much bigger money than him. He won't even be saying, I want what they're on. He'll be saying he wants more than he's on right now. And in my opinion, whatever it is, within reason, he probably deserves it. And giving him a new contract costs us nothing other than the pay rise. Replacing him costs us money on a player who we don't know if he can hit the ground running, whereas Dan Neil, we know what he can do. Okay, he hasn't done it in the Premier League yet, but we know how good he is. And he was our captain last season. He was our team captain last season. I think it would be the easiest decision of the whole summer would be to make sure that him and Dennis Sirkin get a new contract. And I really hope that that's what happens with both of them.
This is something that like Gary Neville and the other ex-United lads on the overlap often talk about, isn't it? About like academy players getting a bit of a raw deal when they come through. And as you say, Tom, a bit like that attitude where, oh, well, you used to just be the T-boy or whatever. It's like, oh, well, you come through the academy, so you love the club, so sign what you're given. And I think, is it Paul Scholes always talks about how we never had an agent, and, he literally would just walk in and he'd say, here's your new contract, Paul, and he'd sign it and he'd be off and he wouldn't even look at it really. But you're right, it is a bit of an attitude, I think, that can hurt you quite a lot as a club when it gets to situations like this. You've just laid out all the logic of why it would make perfect sense to give Neil a new contract. But then you see it even in fan sentiment on social media. People like, oh, well, he must be disloyal because he's not signed a contract yet. If he really loved this club, he'd have signed already. And I think we're all guilty of it sometimes. You're a bit like, oh, well, he was the captain. Why is he not signed? But in the cold light of day, that's not actually the case, is it? It's easy to get over emotional.
Our manager has signed a new contract because he deserves it. He got us up. He deserves that new contract. Was it absolutely necessary to give him a new contract? No, it probably wasn't, but he deserves it. Does Dan Neil deserve a new contract? Yes, he does. And he's only got 1 year left on his. So I never go against anything the club do these days. I think the club is really, really well run. And I guess I'm saying more that I hope that they are making sure that Dan Neil gets a new contract and gets what he deserves, because he does whatever he's getting paid. He helped get us up, and he helped get us up from League One before that as well. He was captain last season. He deserves a new contract, and it suits the club to give him a new contract, 100%. And same with Sirkin, but obviously you asked about Neil.
It's not always about money, though. And the only thing that I can't get out of my head is that he's effectively being replaced as the team captain, and that's got to be a blow to him. If we brought in a player who's not only going to play his position, but has taken his captaincy of the team, that's then becomes about more than money. Because when he goes into negotiations, he's like, well, hang on, I want to still be captain of this team. I want to play every week for Sunderland in the Premier League. If you can't offer me that, then I might as well go somewhere else. And that might be the dilemma. That might be the reason why this deal hasn't been done. Because I don't imagine it would be a very difficult conversation to say, yeah, you go, Dan, there's the money you've earned. I think they could pay him handsomely. I'm sure we could pay him what he's worth. It's the other assurances, I think. I might be wrong, but...
Yeah, because the other side of it would be that what if he doesn't want to stay? I'd be very surprised if that is the case, but if he doesn't want to stay, then the argument is completely different, isn't it? It may be a case of, right, do they keep him as a squad player and let him go for free? Or do they sell him now to get some money back? But in terms of the captaincy, if you think when Luke O'Nien was made club captain, Dan Neil was named team captain, because Dan Neil last season was going to play every minute. And I've got a feeling that Le Bris thought that Ballard and Mepham would be the first choice centre-backs, but Luke O'Nien, as he does every year, proved them wrong. So it was club captain, team captain. That, with Dan Neil right now, from judging on pre-season and the amount of money we've spent on central midfielders, he probably isn't going to start. Doesn't mean he can't force his way in. And it wouldn't make him sense to still be team captain if he's not playing. And would they then make him club captain? Well, that's not fair on Luke O'Nien. So I think that is, you can explain that to Dan Neil. Yeah. I think that is kind of understandable in a way.
Yeah. You mentioned before as well, the fact that Régis Le Bris has signed a new contract, and I know we just did a pod about this, but you guys weren't on it, so I'm going to grab your thoughts quickly. Johnny, obviously Le Bris getting the new deal. Tom just said that he probably didn't need one, but it's a big statement to go out and go, we really are behind this man. We want him here as long as possible. And it was mentioned as well that apparently he'd received an approach from another Premier League club earlier in the summer. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out who that probably was, given there's not been much managerial change. It was either Tottenham or Brentford, and I'm probably going to hedge me bets and say it was Brentford. But still, our manager is, an attractive coach. There will be clubs like Brentford and of a similar ilk, not just in England, but elsewhere, looking at him and going, yeah, I like what he's doing at Sunderland. I like the way he's keen to work with young players. I like the way, he doesn't kick up a fuss and is quite happy to work with sporting directors and director of football. And, we can assemble a coaching team around him and he isn't a controversial figure, Régis Le Bris, and I can see why that would be quite appealing to a lot of clubs. So yeah, I'm just glad that he signed a new deal. I think it's a good point to build from, isn't it? Like, this is our guy. We're going to stick by him. He's the man. This whole operation runs around him essentially, and I think we're all big fans of him, aren't we?
Yeah, best signing of the summer, I think. With Granit Xhaka, brilliant. Siddiqui, Diarra, everyone, amazing. But if we lost Le Bris, I'd be absolutely devastated. I think he's been amazing since he came in. And one of his biggest qualities that you didn't actually list off there is he's so adaptable. As you say, staff members are changing around him. You've got assistants coming and going. You've got obviously a load of transfers happening. Even like during last season, you have injuries happen. I mean, I know this happens to every manager, but injuries happen and the situation changes with the automatic promotion race after the Leeds game at Elland Road. And Le Bris just doesn't even break stride, does he? He acts at all times as if everything that's going on was planned already in advance. Even when it definitely wasn't. Job gets a red card and misses 3 games. He's like, oh, well, it's fine. We'll make do. We'll put a player on the pitch and he'll do a job. And I think that's probably what makes him really, really attractive to other clubs as well. Because if he's that adaptable at Sunderland in one job, then it's no stretch to think, well, he can probably cope easily with being parachuted into our club among a new squad and staff and all the rest of it. So I think it's brilliant news. I think, just great to see him staying. It's good. It is good to see the club fully backing him as well. It's a 3 years from now, so it's a 3-year contract as well, which it doesn't sound like much, but obviously in modern football, you don't get too many managers and head coaches staying for that period of time. So great news.
Yeah, in Sunderland terms, that's a lifetime, really, 3 years. But Tom, you're obviously around a lot of people who, I guess, are outside the Sunderland bubble. I don't know do you have many conversations about Régis Le Bris with non-Sunderland supporters who kind of view him from outside of the Sunderland bubble?
No, all I get on Sunderland this summer is about how much we've spent. They never seem to take into account that we've recouped a bit as well, but that's just the way of the footballing world. But how much we've spent and Granit Xhaka.
Right.
That's what they talk. They never mention rate. You know what? I went into work today. I've been in all day, and Le Bris signed his new contract last night. No one mentioned it, but people did mention how much money we're spending on Granit Xhaka. So he has completely gone under the radar from football fans outside of our region, which is
good.
it could be a good thing for us. It's that's the case. Yeah, it's positive news that he signed the new contract. Definitely. Like I say, it wasn't necessary, but we've done it, and most importantly, he deserves it. And he is like you said, Johnny, he is tactically flexible. I've had a conversation with a Manchester United fan today saying, I just don't. Ruben Amorim, he's putting a squad together that can only play in one formation. If he's sacked by Christmas, like this happened with Everton, with Ronald Koeman wanted to play in a certain system with wing backs. He got rid of all the wingers. He had extra number 10s, loads of full backs, stroke wing backs, but no wingers. He was sacked around Christmas time. I think it was Allardyce who came in after Koeman actually, and had to he was like, well, I'm stuck with this formation until I've had a really good transfer window, which he did. And I think they finished somewhere like 8th, and they were relegation zone when Koeman went. And that's my fear for Manchester United. But with Régis Le Bris, he's making sure that we can play. We know we can play 4-4-2. We know we can play 4-2-3-1, which is very easy to make a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3. It just means bringing the number 10 slightly back. There's not that's easy. And from his time out in France, he played with 3 at the back. And that is going to be very important in the Premier League when we're coming up against clubs of all different qualities, where sometimes in the Championship you can say, oh, let them adapt to us because we're better than them. In the Premier League, we're not going to be able to do that. We're going to have to adapt to them.
You mentioned the transfer window there, and it just reminds us of something you said the last time you were on, which was that you said we would break our transfer record several times, and we did, to be fair. because at that time we had only signed Enzo Lefebvre by proxy. We then went on to sign Habib Diarra at the start of July. We've signed Chemsden Talby for 20 odd million, Noah Siddiqui 20 odd million, Granit Xhaka 20 million euros. God knows what else we've spent. We've spent a lot of money, haven't we? But that must be pleasing for you, not only because, you're living and breathing transfers every day, but it as you say, it's made Sunderland a talking point in the wider world. I think people are viewing us very seriously, and that was even before we signed Xhaka. We'd spent a lot of money before Granit Xhaka came to the table, and all of a sudden you sign someone who I think is a world-class footballer, still, despite being 32-year-old, it was still one of the best players in Germany last season, was still one of the best players in Europe last season, and Sunderland have signed him? That's made us a talking point, hasn't it?
It has, and just before I tell you about Xhaka, anyone who you've ever had on from Sky will tell you how hard it is for us to get a transfer story to air. We have to go through so many checks and be absolutely certain. Only this day last week, I had a text to say that Lucimi, isn't it? John Lucimi from Bologna?
Lucimi, yeah. Don't think anybody knows how to say that name yet, but yeah, something like that.
I had a text to say that was quote pretty much done. Well, it obviously wasn't, because a week later here we are and he hasn't signed. And any stories so we didn't touch it because we couldn't get it any further, because that's because we had to do all of our checks. So when it comes to getting a story to air, when you're saying about how exciting it is that people are talking about us, it's very difficult. We've got to check with everyone to get that on the breaking news. But with Xhaka, I was always, once we were in for him, and once I realised we were genuinely in for him, I was very confident we would get him. I'll tell you why. It's because Kirill Louis-Dreyfus, he was pushing that. He basically took control. I don't know whether he was asked to by one of the sporting directors, or whether it was by Régis Le Bris, or whether it was his own decision that he wanted Xhaka at the club. I don't know that. But I know that he dealt with that personally. He was like, right, we want Granit Xhaka. He is the one they were really pushing for Xhaka. And he said, right, I'm just going to take charge of it. And once I heard that, I knew it was going to get done. Because in the past, I know that when owners get involved, maybe it's their egos and they don't like losing. I don't know what it is, but those deals get done. Fabio Borini, when he signed permanently for us, all summer we tried to get him. Liverpool were asking for a lot of money, and Borini really wanted a chance at Liverpool. It's not that he didn't want to come to Sunderland, it's that he really wanted a chance at Liverpool, especially after he'd had a loan spell a couple of seasons with us, which had been very successful. He thought he deserved his chance at Liverpool. Anyway, towards the end of the window, Ellis Short just phoned Fabio Borini himself and said, Fabio, Liverpool want 14 million. I'm going to give them it. I'm going to give them 14 million. Right, what's it going to take? Now, from that, when you get a phone call from the owner, one, you feel wanted, but two, from a more cynical point of view, you say, God, I can probably get whatever I want here. And so Ellis Short took charge and Fabio Borini signed for 14 million. I think it was deadline day, because Ellis Short said, I'm just going to take, forget everyone else. I'm just taking control of this myself. And this happens with other owners as well. There's another one. I won't mention the name of the player because this is more of a negative one, where there was a player we had who, the sporting director at the time, we didn't have very many saleable assets. And also the manager wasn't that keen on this player. So the sporting director was trying to sell this player. And in a game, he got man of the match. Now, the man of the match goes to certain suites around the Stadium of Light post-match. So he's in one of the suites getting interviewed by someone in front of the fans. And Ellis Short turns up and gets the microphone and says, to this player in front of everybody, don't worry, everybody. I know how much you love this guy. I am going to make sure that he signs a new contract this week. Right? And he said to the player, go and see such and such, the sporting director or director of football, whatever you want to say, and just tell him what I've just said. And don't worry, I'll back you up. Just tell him you want a new contract, and I'm gonna take charge of this. Now, the sporting director at the time Like, his whole transfer window is based around selling this player for good money, getting his wages off, and then giving that money to the head coach who didn't really want this player. This player really awkwardly walks into the sporting director's office and says, Ellis says, I need a new contract. And he says, ring him if there's like quite awkwardly, says I need to sign a new contract. This point I was, oh, for God's sake. Anyway, the player, true to the word, because the owner had stepped in, he signed a new contract, which, by the way, I'm not going to say who it is, but actually well done to Ellis Short. This was good because we loved this player and he did very, very well for us. And he was so key for us for a number of years. Actually, it worked out well. But my point is that when it came to signing Xhaka, the owner got involved. So I was very confident that it was going to get done. And Xhaka's not the only one. Since Kira Louis-Dreyfus has come in, he's taken charge of a lot of deals. But they've been obviously smaller scale because we've been in League One and the Championship. But once I knew that he was taking charge of Xhaka, I knew he was coming.
I was trying to narrow down who you're talking about there, and I was thinking, Sporting Director didn't have many sellable assets. The manager didn't really like the player. We clearly weren't that good. That could be anybody up from
Exactly. By the way, the player involved and the sporting director wouldn't even mind me saying, but because it's not very nice for people to know that the sporting director and the manager wanted him out. That's the only reason I'm not saying it. That's the only reason. It's not like scandal or anything.
We'll leave that to the listeners to try and guess who you were talking about there. There'll be some Poirot out there, or Inspector Clouseau, who's there.
I've told the player because I've spoken to both the player and the sporting director about it as well, and we've all laughed at it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what people's theories are and coming up with who this is. Let's get on to transfers, and I guess since we've kind of touched on it there and already mentioned some of the players we've already signed, people will be hoping you've got some nuggets for them, Tom. And I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I'm putting you on the spot here. Is there anything that you can tell us about what's going on at the minute? I know that Mark Yu, that's not gone through as of recording. We don't know. We're expecting it to be done, but that would slow down a little bit. There have been links to a right back. I think it was Sky Sports Germany. Patrick Berger, there was the reporter there. Not the guy who used to play for Liverpool, a different Patrick Berger, linking us to Dortmund right back Julian Ryerson. There's obviously the centre-half issue, which we've danced around today, but that's my big concern going into the season. We need a centre-half, and there have been links to Loid Bardet, who plays for Sevilla. There's been other defenders linked, but nothing concrete. You mentioned John Lusumi before. So, yeah, what's going on at Sunderland? Are we expecting any more anytime soon, do you think?
Yeah, well, the Lusumi, I've looked his name up on purpose here. Yeah, Lusumi, you're right. John Lusumi. That's the name I can give you because I know we have been in for him. Whether we've pulled the plug or whether he's rejected us, I don't know. But he's a name I know that we have actually been after as a centre back. So I think everybody knows we're after a centre back, probably two. I mean, there's proof we have actually been trying to get one. Those other names I can't confirm at all whether those names are true. And if you think about it, most of the signings we've signed. Most of the players we've signed have come out of nowhere. It's been reported mainly, first of all, by Keith, and then it's just done. You know, we had everyone. I remember when he said live on air that we had a player signing that day. He was on a flight to the northeast. Well, Gav, you text me. Loads of people text me saying, "Who's this guy that Keith's talking about?" You know, Keith knew it was Simon Adingra, but he had to just keep it quiet. Because, you know, he wanted to wait until that plane touched down and he could get it just to absolutely shore it up. But when like I said, Keith broke it that morning and he signed that day. And that's what's happening at Sunderland at the moment. But in terms of players coming in, I can tell you there'll be a few more. I can tell you that I'm expecting at least another 4. At least.
Yeah.
And I think there could even be more. Remember, last time I was on, like we said, it was a long time ago. At the very start of the transfer window. And the information that we were getting was that we only wanted to sign 4 or 5 players down the spine of the team. And I remember at the time, I said on the podcast, I think what they mean is 4 or 5 players as kind of guaranteed starters, and there will be several more signed around them, which I think we can kind of say is the case so far, although I've actually got a feeling there'll be a couple of more first team starters coming into that as well. But I think there'll be at least 4 more players. But the only name that I can say is Lasumi. And that's not, I'm not saying he's definitely going to sign, but I know that we have been in for him.
It's that seems to be a bit of a strange one, that, because I think he's got options. I think Bologna would like to keep him from what we're reading. You know, there's also been other teams in for him and stuff. And I think at his age, he's 27, so he's probably looking for either a big fat contract somewhere or a decent contract, which is still pretty fat, plus some European football. And obviously Sunderland being a newly promoted team, it's a bit of a tougher sell to a player who's got options, isn't it? But, you know, we're clearly targeting a centre-half, Tom, who's got a lot of upside. And I mean, by that I mean, I don't mean like somebody who you're gambling on. We're looking at, from some of the names you see, and these are lads who could probably get into most teams in the Premier League. And you've got to admire the club's ambition. I think we've managed, certainly with the signing of Granit Xhaka, we've managed to bring in players who would probably get into a lot of other teams in the Premier League. And I suppose it all feeds into this idea that we're not just coming up to make up the numbers, we're coming up to compete and try and finish higher than third bottom, you know, or fourth bottom. We're trying to really compete in the Premier League. And if that means we take a little bit more time to get the right players, I think the club will take the time, won't they?
Yes, and since Kira Louis-Dreyfus and Christian Speakman have been in, they've usually left it late in the summer window. And remember, we've been in the EFL, so our season has started earlier, so there's been more games where our squad hasn't been settled. But in the Premier League, I think maybe they wait till the fixtures came out and thought, actually, we've got to get off to a good start, because it's not Man City away, Liverpool at home, then Arsenal away. You know, it's West Ham, Burnley, and Brentford, is it? Is that
so, yeah.
And they might have gone, oh, we could do with getting some points on the board early. Let's get some deals done early. But remember that we also have got, as things stand, we've still got 2 domestic loans that we can make. Mark Guieu has been one of them who has been very close. I don't know what happened the other night. I know that his flight, the wording was postponed. Now, that night the weather was bad, but flights have been going since then, and he still hasn't come in. So I don't know what the latest is with that, but that would be 1 domestic loan. That would leave 1 more, and we can get several more loans from abroad as well. And if we kind of think, right, we're spending too much money, the loans from abroad, you can usually put in an obligation to buy if we stay up. Preferably not as we do with Ricky Alvarez, but we could still bring in more players that cost us next to nothing right now with that obligation to buy if we stay up. So, and those loans, my point of me saying that, those loans tend to be later, because the clubs that they're currently at, 1, they need to check if they need them. 2, they will want to sell them rather than loan them, and they might get an offer right up until deadline day, and they might decide to loan them out later on. So although I think that we'll still be targeting players before the West Ham game, I think some will come in right at the end, but they are more likely to be loans, maybe with options or obligations with certain stipulations. It's a lot of Asians.
I just wanted to touch on something that Gav was just bringing up before. So obviously, Tom, you've speak to a lot of people involved in football, and you see a lot of information come through your various channels at Sky. How much does it actually impact players' decisions where to go, seeing a transfer like Xhaka to Sunderland? Because one of the things that we've all kind of said is like, oh God, imagine the kind of players we're going to attract now that we've got somebody like that in the club, and imagine selling to somebody, or you're going to come and play with somebody as talented as that. Is there ever like an actual sentiment that you see from players or agents or people involved in the deals, that those kind of things do actually make a concrete difference? Or is that just something that we like to kind of tell ourselves to big our club up over everybody else?
No, the best example of that involves our club. It was Wes Brown and John O'Shea. When it was Steve Bruce, wasn't it, went in for those two. And they took their time, they thought about it, and John O'Shea was like, "You know, I think I'm going to make the move." And Wes Brown's like, "Oh yeah, right. I tell you what. Well, if you're going to go, I'm going to go." And Wes Brown and John O'Shea tell this story differently. Wes Brown's story's funnier because the truth isn't often the funniest thing, but isn't the best story isn't the truthful story. So what Wes Brown's story is, Wes Brown signed a day before John O'Shea. You may or may not remember, he signed a day before. So Wes Brown was in, we had pictures of him in his people carrier and everything. And he was ringing John O'Shea, and John O'Shea was being a bit shady. And there was word going round that Stoke had gone in for John O'Shea, and John O'Shea was just thinking, I'll just speak to them. So Wes Brown was like, "You stitched me up here. That wasn't the deal. You can't go to Stoke because you said you were joining me at Sunderland." Anyway, so John O'Shea, of course, did sign for Sunderland. It turned out that John O'Shea's wife went into labour that day. So that's why he hadn't signed on the same day as Wes Brown, and he signed a day or two later. So the truthful story is actually quite, oh yeah, fair enough. It's, bit of a coincidence, what have you. But Wes Brown's story is a lot funnier. It's like, "You've stitched me up here. I've signed. Where are you?" But anyway, they both signed. So yes, so in terms of that question, that's a very specific story. But when we sign a player like Granit Xhaka, it does make people sit up and take notice. Go, one, they mean business, but two, if they've attracted Granit Xhaka, he's more high profile than me. If they've sold him this dream and it's good enough for him, that dream's good enough for me. And that's, in normal life, you'd think that in any job, really.
There's been a few links, sort of, there could be tenuous, there could be bullshit, really. I mean, we get linked to loads of players and we don't sign them. But there's been a sort of an upturn in links to players who have played a lot of football in the Premier League or are a little bit older. I mean, the two that come straight to mind from the last couple of days are Alexander Mitrovic and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which again, they might have just been, mooted stories. They might have just been, very tenuous links. Might not even be true. But the point is that we're being linked with players who've got a little bit more Premier League experience. Do you think that that's what we probably need now to add? Now we've added quite a lot of young players, haven't we? But Bomber made this point on the pod yesterday that, of the team which played in the friendly the other day against Hull, there was only Simon Adingra on the pitch with any Premier League experience. There was 60-odd appearances in the full team, and they were all his. That is the one thing I'm clinging to, is that we probably do need, you say we need 4 more players. I would argue maybe all 4 of them, or maybe if we need 5 players, 4 of them should be players who've played in the Premier League.
Ideally, I would say a centre-back and a striker in that, with that sort of experience in the Premier League. So, yes, I do agree with you. Whether we're going down that road or not, I don't know. But yes, I do agree with you because that Premier League experience is important, because Xhaka's brought it in. Adingra hasn't got a lot, like you said, 60 appearances. Most of them, without looking it up, I'd say probably most were probably from the bench. Although it's 60 games, it's not 60, 90 minutes. There'll be probably very, very few 90 minutes in there. And although I think a lot of the players who've stepped up and the players we've signed will prove quite easily to be Premier League standard, they haven't got those minutes under their belt in what is the top league in the world. With those names that you just mentioned, Mitrovic, I'd be very surprised about. I think the word was that he'd been offered to us. I don't know whether that's true or not, but you can offer. There's probably been 1,000 players offered to us.
Yeah.
There's the Naif Agard at West Ham. He's got Premier League experience, but again, not really that much. When you say Dominic Calvert-Lewin, well, Everton could pay him. Everton offered him a lot of money, but it was dependent on his appearances because he was injured a lot. I don't think anyone's going to give him. I think he probably wants assured money as opposed to a low wage with a big appearance fee. Is that going to be us? I wouldn't have thought so. So of the names you've mentioned there, I'd be surprised, but I would certainly not be surprised if at least two more players who come in do have Premier League experience, and I think that would be the correct thing to do as well.
A lot of the talk as well, Tom's been about obviously the players coming in. That's all we've talked about really here when it comes to transfers. But we've got a lot of players as well that probably need to leave the club. And there was that first sort of match day of pre-season where the squads were split, and there was a game at Hebbins Ground against Gateshead, and you had the likes of Hemir, Rusin, Barr, trying to think who else. Pembele has not been mentioned. Nobody has actually confirmed what's going on with Pierre-Emerick, but apparently, we've sold him. Neither club have mentioned it, but there we go. But, there are a lot of players. There's others, like Zach Johnson, who probably needs to go and get game time somewhere. Harrison Jones probably needs a loan. Abdullahi, the striker, he'll probably get a loan somewhere. Jan Poveda, somebody the club clearly want rid of. And I could probably list off another 10 if I thought about it. But we've got a lot of players to try and get rid of. Why do you think it is that we haven't really had any departures? Is it just a case that the club are focusing resources on bringing players in, or are these just deeply unattractive players that nobody wants? It's a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, it is. Something came into my mind there on Mitrovic. Let me just tell you one quick point about Mitrovic. I just dismissed that without explaining it. It's not that someone's told me it's not true. It's that he's gone out. If you go out to Saudi Arabia, you get big money and it's tax-free. But it's only tax-free if you're there for 3 years, right? Or you go to somewhere else where it's tax-free for that 3 years. Otherwise, you come back and you pay taxes in that country. So it wouldn't make sense for Mitrovic to come back here, because it would be not only a huge pay cut, but he'd have to give some money back. And Henderson did that when he went to Ajax, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a long shot for. Not many players would do that, but sorry. So that just popped into my mind. In terms of the players we need to lose, yes, there are loads of them, but they won't be on big money. We have in the past been trying to shift so many players, probably had to subsidise their wages, probably had to pay up their contracts, and that has stopped us bringing players in. These players won't be on. They'll be on a heck of a lot more money than. It's a heck of a lot more money than us. I've got no idea what you two earn, but I've got a feeling that they are now Premier League footballers. I've got a feeling they earn more than us. But they won't be on mega money. We can probably afford them to play for the under-21s right now, and just keep them there if they don't want to go. All of them will have been told that they can go. All of them will have their agent on the case right now, trying to get the best move for them. They won't be in a hurry unless a club comes in and offers them a pay rise. Sunderland won't be in a hurry to get rid of them because, like I say, it won't be a lot of money. We can probably afford it. We won't mind if it's a loan. And even if we subsidise, even if someone pays 80% of their wages rather than 20, and we pay 20, there won't be a huge rush. I mean, Ekwa, I assume Ekwa's gone, but
nobody's said it though, have they?
I know it's a strange one that, but if he's gone and there was a transfer fee, we'll have taken that transfer fee. Great, but if at the moment all the offers on the table for these players who are clearly outcast are just loans, like I went back to talking about loans coming in, we can wait and see if somebody comes in with a bit of money. There's not a huge rush for it. Barr. I mean, I've always liked Jay Matete, but I must admit I wouldn't put him in the Premier League. I would have kept him in the Championship, by the way. I actually really liked him. But Matete, Barr, Aushish has gone out on loan early, which I was surprised about. I didn't think he would. I thought he could have waited a bit of time. Rusin as well. Rusin, they'd probably like to recoup a bit of money because he actually cost a bit of money. But there are loads of players. Helder won't go because he's injured. I would imagine that Elise was probably only going to be going out on loan anyway rather than be sold. He won't go
I did hear he wants to move. I did hear that he would like to go. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But apparently he wants to be closer to home. So
okay, well, right, understandable. But he's injured, so no one's going to. You'll have to wait till January. But there will be no rush on any of these players. There'll be no rush because we can afford to pay their wages because they're not that high. It'll be different if we go down to the Championship and we can't get rid of pick a high earner and pick a high earner who hasn't performed and no one wants them. That'll be a problem. Like when we struggled to get rid of Wabi Kazri, and we couldn't get rid of Brian Oviedo. Kone, Gilabodji, couldn't get rid of them, and they were on huge money.
Kicking in here, by the way.
Yeah. You did well in our top 10 worst foreign imports the other week, Tom.
And that was a worry. Right now, this isn't a worry right now. So I just don't think there's any hurry. That's all.
We're kind of on the other side of the coin, aren't we, Johnny? This used to be us, sort of waiting for everyone's cast-offs to become available at the end of the window, and I guess that's what's happening. There's all these players that we've got, and there'll probably be some mad rush in the last couple of days of players going out the other door. I suppose as well, once the West Ham game comes around, that's when the whole squad starts to take its proper form, doesn't it? I know we've got a lot of injuries and stuff, but at the minute we're still fulfilling obligations in pre-season. There might even be an outside chance some of these players are needed, which might be another reason,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big one. Triantis is an excellent example. I was just going to say, it's all well and good saying, look, bar, probably Pembele, Auschwitz has obviously got out on loan. Those kind of players, Rusin, they're just obvious. You're just not going to be needed. Like, we don't even want you on the bench because you're just not good enough. Sorry. Unfortunately, cutthroat nature of football. But you've got your Triantises, you've got even Seal as well is another one who, let's say by the end of this month, we've actually already got 2 centre-backs in and we've got an opportunity for a third. You might go, actually, if somebody wants to come in and take Seal on loan and pay a bit of a loan fee, that's an avenue that opens up. So for me, I think it'll be more interesting to see what goes on with those kind of players, the ones who are just on the fringes, because they do really tend to kind of fall into that. Once one domino goes, then the rest start to go towards the end of the window, and then you see those kind of players moving on. But it's going to be a hectic few weeks, no matter what happens.
Yeah. Go on then, Tom, before we go, give us your big prediction for this podcast. Your last one was, we're going to break the record, the transfer record. What's your big prediction for, let's say we get you back on in a month or so after the transfer window is shut. What can we hold you to account for on that one?
At least 4 more players.
Right.
And I'm going to say 2 centre-backs, a winger and a striker. I don't think, I would be surprised if we sign a right back because Siddiqui and O'Nien can play there. And I think that Hume will prove to be Premier League quality. As long as
Huggins,
Sirkin...
by the way.
Huggins, of course. If Sirkin doesn't go, we don't need another left back. But we just don't know whether he will. Because he's injured, hopefully he won't go. And hopefully, like I said, he'll sign a new contract. A winger, purely because we tried to sign Loriente and that went wrong. Yeah. So we obviously want another winger. And a striker, because I think we like 100% need one. Although Mark Gue, by the time this goes out, he might have already signed. But I'm going to say I'm saying at least 4, and that's on the basis that none of our first team players like Dan Neil or Dennis Sirkin go.
Well, we'll see what happens in a month or so, Tom. We'll get you back and we'll say, right, you said this would happen and it didn't happen. It's all on you.
That wasn't that exciting, that prediction, though, wasn't it? I'm thinking to myself, I wish I could think of a better one because I think that's fairly obvious. My transfer record one was actually quite good.
We might break that again. You never know.
Yeah.
Say it, to be fair, you did say we would break it several times and we've only done it once. So...
Was Diarra before the rest, was he?
Yeah, technically we broke it twice because Lefebvre was one and then Diarra was the other, and everything after's been under Diarra.
Yeah, it was after Lefebvre, so I suppose I said it when Lefebvre had signed, so I guess it has.
You're a fraud, Tom. I see. You see how
I'll stick with that then and say we'll break it again.
Brilliant.
Well, right.
When we sign Sesko for 85 million from Leipzig. Just say you heard it here first, you know.
I did not say that.
Now, thank you very much, Tom. Been a pleasure as always.
Always
mate.
a pleasure.
Joining us. And just to remind people, where will they be able to catch you going forward now on Sky Sports?
So the new show, Monday, 10 a.m. till midday, Monday to Friday. So for the first time in my career, I get weekends off, and it's the season that we're back in the Premier League. How about that?
Yeah, so it's almost as though you've engineered that. Thanks a lot, Johnny. As always,
Yeah,
mate.
cheers. Yeah, cheers, and thanks again to Tom for coming on. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks to the listeners. Just in case you missed it, we've got loads on the feeds this week. Match reaction from the game at the weekend, in case you didn't catch that. The On This Week pod with me, Chris and Martin, where we look back at Sunderland history, go deep down some tunnels to see what went on in the history of the club on that particular week. There was a pod yesterday with me, Ant, Bomber and Andy. And just to let you know, in case you haven't noticed, Road Report, we do have a new website layout. It's all funky and new. The overlords at SB Nation have blessed us with a nice new website, so you can head over there and check it out for the first time if you haven't already. We've got a new feature on there, the feed, which is a bit like social media. You can get involved in the conversations over on the Road Report website, so make sure you check that out. And also all the social media platforms that we're on, make sure you check us out there too. But that just leaves me to say thank you very much. Be back with a pod tomorrow. We'll see you then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.